Hello, everybody, and welcome to Western Oklahoma Sports Night Early Edition here on a Wednesday in Oklahoma that is hot, 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 hot. Man, it is just viciously hot. And temperatures in the 100s for the near foreseeable future. So as I always say, take those heat precautions, hydrate. You can't hydrate enough. And be sure and stay in the cool as much as you can. And I tell you, somebody who I think is cool, and it was very cool of him to come on our program last year. It's Bill Connelly from ESPN and also a Weatherford alum. And Bill, we're so glad to have you here on the program with us. This is a busy time for you, but I sure appreciate you taking a little bit to chat with the folks in Western Oklahoma.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm going to say this. I know that your summer was not uneventful because not only did you have media days for college football, but you also cover soccer for the mothership. So the World Cup was in the United States. What was the level of your participation in World Cup viewing?
A lot more than I anticipated, at least in the travel department. I ended up doing 4 of the Kansas City matches, 3 Houstons, 2 Dallases, and a Toronto over the course of a little over a month there. Ended up going all the way through to the Spain-France semifinals. So no complaints. Very cool. I have 10 of those flag pictures from the press box where they have the 2 flags and the team in between. So I'm looking for a nice little 2x5 frame to maybe put right over here in the backdrop behind me a little bit. It was a pretty cool experience.
It really was. And I thought that the United States, I thought North America did a great job with the Cup this year. I attended a game in 94 at the Cotton Bowl. That was great at the time. I think in hindsight, compared to what Jerry World and some of the other locations can bring, it's probably a little bit higher end viewing in person, but I know the prices sure reflected that as well. But, Arrowhead had to be pretty happy and proud to get to host as many events as they did.
Yeah, Kansas City wanted this more than anybody else. I think there's no question about that. They really tried to put on a show as much as possible. They accepted all of we need to invest, we need to spend money on this and this and this and this. And, I never know if those things really pay out the way you're looking for them to as a city. I know Chicago certainly didn't think it would and didn't even try. But for Kansas City, it was a nice publicity opportunity. And obviously, England, Argentina, Netherlands all stayed there. And I got to watch the Orange Army march down by the Power and Light District of Kansas City. And Argentina fans filled the place. Ecuador fans filled the place for one game. Yeah. So, I hate the FIFA. They got their way, and the dynamic ticket prices and whatnot didn't really backfire on them all that much. But it was some really good environments I got to see.
For sure. I was able to watch Brazil, who ended up winning the 94 World Cup, take on Dennis Bergkamp. And
that match.
I think Ruud Gullit was in that one, and Bergkamp really kept the Netherlands in that. But the night before, the Dutch were down in the West End in Dallas, and the dueling piano bar players were not really fans of the Dutch back then. They did not like them breaking into their piano routines doing the ole, ole, ole. So that was a contentious moment, but it was a lot of fun. And I just think the World Cup really does, regardless of all the issues with the organizing bodies and politics and things like that, when you get the play on the field, it really does just become kind of magical. And definitely something that renews my soccer fandom, and energizes it every 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. International soccer is kind of the world version of of a lot of the things I get out of college football every year, just in terms of, there are fewer and fewer things that can kind of unite us and have us all watching one thing and reacting together and interacting with each other and just being able to see that on a world stage. And, for all the bad in the country, it was kind of fun to also watch, fans discover certain restaurants in certain cities and Buc-ee's and all those kind of things that were going around on social media. So yeah, if you could afford it, you had a great time.
Yeah.
It was a shame that it was only available to those who could afford it, I guess.
I think Erling Haaland probably exposed as much of American culture to Europe as he possibly could. He seemed to be living the high life, but
And he was rewarded for it too. I mean, I had a couple different my neighbor who's 70 something from Wisconsin, and then a friend of mine in the college football analytics community. Neither of them, he's in his 50s. Neither of them had ever paid a lick of attention to soccer if they didn't have to. I don't know if they're soccer fans now, but they're definitely Erling Haaland fans.
yeah.
And they were, you got to tell me something bad about him because I'm falling hard, and
I was not a fan of him all the time before the Cup with Man City. I just thought, who he's kind of possum-eyed for one thing, and just looks like a Children of the Corn clone or something. But the 2 goals he scored, I believe, against was it Brazil?
Brazil, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted out, he's him. I mean, that's just performing at that level on that stage is just really astounding. But also, I think I shared a link to your article of how to enjoy soccer after the World Cup, which is very public service oriented for you to provide that to people who wonder, how can I continue all this fun? And, Bill, at my age, I realized that particularly the 2 World Cups now that have been in the United States, and anytime the United States national team has success, it's always, it's gonna take over. Well, it's not, but it's gonna have a good place and a lot of fans in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's not catching football, but depending on how you arrange the survey, there was a survey last fall, like way before the World Cup or anything like that, where it basically asked Americans, like, what's your favorite sport? The end. And obviously we like more than one sport, and who knows how that would have, if you had some sort of ranked choice kind of situation. But the poll had football was in the 30s, basketball was at like 18%, soccer was third, just ahead of baseball. And I think one of the things we misunderstand or underestimate a little bit is soccer fandom in the country. I mean, obviously, number one, it's a reminder that there is a lot of diaspora in this country. Got a reminder of that at every game I went to. And obviously, if you're from another place, chances are soccer is the favorite sport of that country. And you come here and you love soccer. But then also, soccer just has so many ways in. That makes it really unique. Like, if you're a baseball fan, you're a Major League Baseball fan. If you're a soccer fan, you could have come in through World Cups and international play. You could have come in through women's game. You could have come in through MLS. You could have come through Premier League on Saturday mornings. There are just a lot of different ways in, and you add those up and you have a pretty significant fandom.
I'm going to say my fandom at its most fervent was in the mid 2000s, probably when there was Fox Soccer Channel. And not to knock your employer or any other network that carries, Premier League soccer or world soccer, but boy, the nightly Fox Soccer Report, and then also the winter Argentinian games that they highlighted. It was fun. I mean, it was worth it.
Yeah, that was something I never had it. I never had Fox Soccer Channel. I don't even think I had an option to subscribe to it. But once Premier League showed up on, I think it was ESPN first, and then NBC, La Liga, Bundesliga, etc. Once I was exposed to it daily, I'd followed international soccer forever. But once you get into club soccer, that's the real obsession, and when the real obsession starts. And also, it reminds you daily just how much it's like college football. The worlds are very, very familiar to you.
It really is. We're visiting with Bill Connelly from ESPN, formerly of SB Nation, if some of you guys remember that. He visited with us last year. He's a Weatherford, Oklahoma High School Eagle alum and also University of Missouri alum. He developed the SP Plus ranking system, which works on a lot of different factors, and we talked about that last year. Also, he is the author of Forward Progress, the definitive guide to the future of college football, which was released a year ago. Bill, we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter X, so if anybody wants to shoot a question to Bill Connelly, we appreciate that. And how the book sales go. I mean, it's a lot of great content within that book. You gave me a sneak peek at it. A lot of stuff that it really affects a lot of people's sports fandom of how things gone since the publishing of the book.
One fun thing I've learned about book publishing is all of that's extremely murky. I don't know if I ever saw a single sales number.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Okay.
who knows? But I know that the reaction was good, and the reviews were solid, and so on. And so, as far as I'm concerned, it did well. I have absolutely no idea.
That's like my 4-2 game that went viral. It's like up
right.
12 million views on ESPN, and I wouldn't, I've not seen dime one, but that's
right.
okay.
I guarantee it didn't sell 12 million copies, but I know it. As far as I'm concerned, it did fine. I don't know.
It's not based on the quality of the writing, I promise you that. And it was just a really interesting thing. And I would think some of the things we'll get into real quick in college football. You probably have been doing a little bit of a victory lap because you mentioned the government jumping in and trying to do something about it. You mentioned the need for a commissioner, playoff expansion, private equity firms. My gosh, that's just scary to me thinking about it. But talk about how you see the landscape a year later after publishing your book.
Yeah, I mean, when you do a current events thing for anything, much less football, like you're obviously setting yourself up to be outdated like the moment the book comes out. So there are certain things I'm sure you can find in there that didn't happen or already happened or whatever. But I ended up, I think I said in the book that I thought there was a 51% chance of legislation passing in this little window that they had. Now I'm leaning more towards about, probably 49% or maybe even a little lower than that, but we can see, I think it played out exactly as I expected it to. It's just maybe it ends up not quite happening instead of barely happening. So there's that. But no, I mean, the idea behind the book in general was just, it's both how did we get here and where are we going. And so the how did we get here part is definitely, it will remain up to date or kind of a story worth telling for a while. And then when you spin it forward, you're opening yourself up to who knows what. But I think the points of how we got here and then also how we don't know the future at all and how exactly it's going to iterate, well, that has certainly been backed up.
Definitely. And I don't see just a ton of stuff where you were way off base. I mean, and that's saying a lot for people that work at your network. But anyway, no, it's one of those situations, Bill, where like you said, the historical part, which, I'm sure for a journalist and a writer like yourself is kind of it's about putting in the work and finding the stuff, but then also to go out on a limb and say, here's something that we could be facing or this and that. Very, very tenuous at times. But like I said, I when I look at the state of college football and what they are trying to do, I just don't see that much fallacy on your part. But you do live in a world where what you put out for content is judged by people who pay attention. I haven't seen you on freezing cold takes yet, so that's a good thing. But your SP Plus rankings, everybody's an expert. But when I look at the final season rankings, it seems like you are always in the ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, it's if we're talking about the preseason projections, yeah, I mean, there are always going to be some whiffs. Even though I SP Plus, and then me personally, much lower on Clemson last year than really anybody.
Yeah,
I still thought they were going to be a top 15 team, and SP Plus still had them like 10th overall. So yeah, it is. It's evidence collection and how have you done and who do you return and how good are the transfers you brought in and so on. And we're going to have a pretty good read on who's going to be good and bad, and we're going to be wrong. And it'd be a lot less fun if we weren't wrong.
Yeah.
And if we just knew everything beforehand, we wouldn't have to watch. So yeah, to me, it's, a really nice way to kind of setting the table and understanding what's probably going to happen. And then, for a third of the teams we talk about, it's something completely different is going to end up happening, and that's fine.
Well, and, in this day and time, Bill, I mean, I think that we are able to kind of corner in the programs with regards to their money and, a sad fact to that, and then you throw in some tradition and logistics and things like that. But for the most part, I mean, if Lane Kiffin pulls off a long playoff run, it will prove that the more money you spend, the more success you can have. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, you just look at a list of budgets, you're going to have, most of those are going to be, it's going to correlate pretty well to who's actually good. But at the same time, there are always going to be teams spending stupid money. Like Texas obviously is in really good shape right now, but there was a very long period of time where Texas just couldn't get its act together with all the money in the world. So I do worry constantly about kind of have versus have not separation, and the fact that the best mid-major team can only kind of be about the 20th best team in the country now, whereas 15 years ago, I think Boise State, I had at their peak, I think they were sixth in SP Plus in I think 2011. Now 2 years ago they had they made a great run, had maybe the best player in the country in Ashton Genty. They were like the 20th best team in the country, and so that's not as much fun to me. I like when those upsets happen, but at the same time, as long as we're in a situation right now, we're in a reality right now where Indiana just won the national title, and so however we think reality is taking shape. 2 years ago, nobody in the world would have believed that was even 1% possible. So there are going to always be surprises, and always, we never quite know what's coming down the pike. So maybe things are capable of changing in the future. We'll see.
Well, and I think also with someone like Kurt Signetti, who, coach speak is kind of beyond him. He's gonna kind of speak his mind and call things as he sees them. But you look at the way they work the portal and what they were able to do. I mean, it's obvious that the evaluation process is still just a huge aspect of it, because I think I tweeted this out last year. The fact that if Oklahoma would have had Vanderbilt and Indiana on their schedule, both games could have been a pick 'em, or OU could have been underdogs. So just on odds sake. But then you think about the teams that are up there that haven't won a national championship in quite a while. I mean, Texas 05, OU 2000, and Florida State. They won the one with Jameis Winston, but just some of these big lumbering programs, just really not able to get it done. And then you've got Indiana with Signetti just blows the top off of it. But with SP Plus, I like looking at your rankings, and we actually have a little graphic here, if you don't mind, if you're okay with me using it.
Yeah, good luck trying to suss out anything in that. You got to have to go to Twitter to zoom in, but yeah.
We've got it. I can read it. Hopefully viewers can read it as well. But your SP Plus, big on Ohio State, obviously explosive plays are predictive, big time with all of that offensive firepower they have. I think they're expecting great things, but I like your top 10. I don't have any real issues. I mean, OU fans, well, that's not supposed to do that. OU fans might have issue with, being outside the top 10, but I think preseason, you don't really have to worry about stuff like that.
Yeah, and what people are looking at right here is the entire FBS through NAIA list that I post on Twitter, and people love the big colored blobs apparently. But the top 10, really, whether we're talking about polls or SP Plus or whatever, it does seem like there have been some tiers. So one way or another, we're going to seem to start with Ohio State, Oregon. Then there's going to be a foursome of Notre Dame, Georgia, Indiana, Texas in some order. And then after that, it's basically Miami, Texas Tech, and half the SEC. That's kind of the next tier. And, that's kind of, again, like some of these projections are going to be way off, but in terms of just what we know about these teams and where they should start off, I don't have any major complaints. I like it when SP Plus disagrees with the polls a little bit more than it does here. It's a lot more fun when I can at least point to Clemson being way off or something, but really the only disagreements, SP Plus has Ole Miss a lot lower. I kind of have a factor in there where if you've performed way above your historical averages or way below, and then you change coaches, you're probably going to kind of regress towards your historical mean. It's why Oklahoma State's back in the top 40, and North Texas is projected to plummet because they basically traded rosters. But for a team like Ole Miss that just lost Lane Kiffin, who legitimately was their best coach in the last 50 years, from a numbers standpoint, maybe that makes it hard to sustain what they're doing. But then if you're a pollster, you see Trinidad Chambliss and Keywan Lacey, and you're like, well, they're going to be awesome again.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And maybe that turns out to be right. We'll see.
Well, and Southwestern Oklahoma State, they're sitting in a comfortable 406.
406, baby.
And Maine Maritime brings up the tail end at 771. Man, Bill, 771 teams. My goodness. I can imagine the time it takes to come up with the chart, much less to research these squads and be able to tell their SP plus factors.
Yeah, now that I've done it enough, the chart comes together pretty quickly, but you do still have to input a lot of scores and a lot of data to get to that point. And it was fun. I post these on social media throughout the season. And they get a pretty good response. I think, number one, I think fans of small schools just kind of love being able to get mad about something like everybody else does. Had one of the top NAIA programs had a fan yesterday, like Benedictine or something like that, saying, "This is preposterous. I can't believe that." I was like, that had to feel good. You had to, you get to national media is disrespecting us.
That's right.
But it was also kind of funny. I've noticed fans of certain programs like root for columns, like, oh, we're almost to the 7th column, and kind of follow that along. Southwestern actually I think they jumped 2 columns last year.
I think so.
With how they played throughout the season. So hopefully they can jump a couple more this year.
Well, and then also, I always like to see, who's really rocking it in D3.
Yeah.
Mount Union, obviously, or North Central Illinois, kind of the tops there. But
Yeah.
Ferris State, we have a super fan of the podcast that lives right out the back door of Ferris State.
Yeah.
We get a lot of updates with them, and then also Harding being in the Great American Conference is a lot of fun. But I like your SP Plus posts. I mean, it's fun to look at. It's fun to see, like you said, where Southwestern's sitting, and because that's I just think really you should probably be able to start a segment here before too long where you kind of do the John Gruden, getting the swag in the mail type thing, because I mean, Merchant Marines should be giving you a little bit of something for swag, because very few people walking. I bet you I could go to downtown Oklahoma City today and not find, 20 people out of, however many that would know that Merchant Marines had a football program.
My piece that went up on Monday, how to enjoy yourself the most this season. It's kind of my favorite annual post that I do, because basically I rope you in at the top by talking about the big games, like Lane Kiffin versus Ole Miss and Ohio State versus Oregon and all the big games of the season. And then at the end, we're talking about the Merchant Marine triple option offense. And I'm trying to tell you which D3 Wisconsin school to adopt, and try to rope you into being into full sicko mode there and have a lot of fun with the smaller school stuff.
Well, I'm going to follow your advice from that article, and we'll include the link. I think I included the link on the Facebook page. But the adopt a small school team. Now I've already got my pecking order for football is Oklahoma, and then like UTEP, just because UTEP and New Mexico State, that I-10 rivalry I've always been a fan of, and then Southwestern, obviously. But I am going to start looking in the NAIA D3 levels. Actually, probably there's an HBCU, I think in Tyler, Texas. It's Texas College.
Oh, yeah.
And they're coached by former OU receiver Jarrell Jackson, great returner as well. And he is down there. I think he went a little bit viral last year. They don't really have a great weight room, so he put some pickups on some slopes and had his guys out there pushing pickups. So kudos to Coach Jackson. We've given him shout outs as well. And then also one of our contributors, Corey Hogue, who covers Texas non-FBS schools. He used to work for Dave Campbell's Texas football, but now he's doing his own thing. But we try to follow your advice on that. And then also you mentioned the Pepto-Bismol All-Stars, and that's going to be the one-score games that really have the things going. And here's another, marketing strategy, Bill. Coordinate the Pepto-Bismol All-Stars with bad beats on SVP. I think it's a natural connection.
Yeah, apparently, I don't think this is a good thing if you're an Army fan, but they had 9 one-score finishes last year, and just constant drama late in the fourth quarter. This year, with SP Plus, they're projected to have 10 one-score games, and that just sounds like an absolute nightmare. But have fun. Like, we're going to be watching a lot of fourth quarters of Army and California games, apparently.
That's right. Well, and I tell you, as we get into the I guess the second full year of two major super conferences, in essence. I mean, the Big Ten, they've been dominant at the top, probably not top to bottom like the SEC could be, but championships talk volumes. But talk about the impact so far that you see 2 to 3 years in on super conferences really dominating the conversation.
Yeah, I'm never going to feel sorry for the SEC. They're the one who said, like, judge us by our titles. But it is a tricky place for the SEC right now. Like, SEC is not worse. All the headlines about it's fallen off. It doesn't dominate anymore. Like Georgia's taken a slight step backwards. Alabama's taken a couple steps backwards. The rest of the league's the same, and it's deeper than ever with Texas and OU. So, if you just average out my SP Plus ratings, it's always comfortably the best conference in the country. The problem is it doesn't have the top team, and it hasn't for the last few years. Like last year in SP Plus, there were 3 Big Ten teams that ended up higher than any SEC team, and there were 7 Big Ten teams that ended up lower than any SEC team. It was just kind of like Big Ten's a vertical conference, and SEC's a horizontal one, basically. And you get a ton of games in the SEC. Half of all SEC games last year were decided by one score, which was a blast. But that doesn't, you're not entitled to having the best team every year either. And the Big Ten's had a few of those in a row.
And probably you could say that the additions to the Big Ten from the old Pac-12 maybe have been a more positive contribution to that conference than OU and Texas have been to the SEC. I mean, I know Texas
definitely
has
Oregon
playoff appearances.
Yeah, definitely Oregon has been the best of all the programs that moved to either the Big Ten or SEC a couple of years ago. Oregon's definitely been the most stable. Texas did make the semifinals in the first year of the 12 team, and they were driving to tie the game late before the sack and strip. So it's not like they've been poor by any means, but I do think Oregon has really inserted itself nationally. They peaked at a really nice time, and it feels like if we're going to have a different Big Ten champ every year win the national title, it feels like it's Oregon's turn.
Yeah. The super conferences, obviously, I say super conferences, it's a big two. I mean, it's a power two. But it lends itself. And I think we talked a little bit about this last year when we said, we could eventually see the 20 team, Premier League and relegation and such like that. I'll take it one step further. These G6 teams should be getting reimbursed for all the players they lose to the Power Four.
Yeah. I mentioned similarities to soccer. I mean, we certainly have the same like upward, food chain kind of deal with where the talent flows. But at least in soccer, you get paid a transfer fee usually when you lose your players. And the poor American Conference just got raided last year because coaches have learned like lots of high level talent in the G6. It's just now if you're a G6 team, you only get that talent for 1 year, and then they move up. You probably lose your coach too. Between Memphis, USF, East Carolina, and Tulane, one of those teams is going to be awesome this year, but it's hard to tell. You can't tell which because they all lost like 20 starters and a head coach last season. Or East Carolina didn't lose their head coach, but they lost both coordinators and like 20 starters. So it's really hard. And there's still an opportunity there. If you're really good at identifying talent, you can reach down and pick up the best players from elsewhere in FCS from elsewhere in the G6 or from FCS or D2 or whatever. There's tons of talent there too, but it's just the amount of change you have to deal with in a given year has multiplied significantly. And I mean, that was with the legislation that probably won't get through now, but might. They try to address that a little bit, and we'll see. Like, I don't think it passes now, and this will continue to be kind of a food chain effect, but life's a lot busier when you're an AAC coach now.
Well, and I think also, and I hate to give the guy credit, but I think when you look at like Steve Sarkisian, yes, they spend a lot of money in the portal, but really probably the heart of their team are the guys that they recruit and develop through high school recruiting. I mean, it's hard to say that this season because they really did go out and spend a lot.
Yeah, this season's different. Yeah.
Probably could be an outlier, but they still pull in big time recruits. But to me, he seems to probably fail less. And we'll see what Kiffin does. I guess Kiffin did pretty dang good in the portal also, but those two guys seem to be kind of the I'm just rambling Signetti. What can you say about that guy's portal moves? But those squads like that, I mean, are we seeing a difference in like how Texas Tech is doing things,
right,
as opposed to the Big Ten and SEC schools?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, yeah, number one, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, really, Notre Dame. There are still programs that are really, really, really reliant on I guess now you'll call them 5-year recruits, since everybody's going to get 5 years now. And just the depth that provides. Like, you don't hold on to as much depth as you did a decade ago because the second stringers can leave and they can go find another program if they don't think their trajectory is where it needs to be. But they still have just a ton of talent that they develop in house. And honestly, like from what I think it was Max Olson at ESPN wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago just about like the average price of a portal quarterback, portal running back, et cetera. It's still cheaper to hold on to your guys on average than it is to have to go replace them. And so you have that base, you're in good shape. But there's no question the portal, we'll see who's, there have been guys like Mike Norvell at Florida State who absolutely, he got, huge heights because he absolutely aced the portal 2 or 3 straight years. And then he stopped acing the portal very, very quickly. I think it's just a really hard thing to nail every year. With what Texas Tech did last year in the portal, they spent big, obviously. And that was a huge part. But every single guy they plucked got better at Texas Tech than they were at their previous school. Yeah. And that was wild. I mean, they did such a good job of talent identification and then fitting them into a system, especially on defense, that they lost a ton of really good players last year. I'm just going to assume the guys they brought in this year are awesome too. For as far, they are bulletproof in the portal until proven otherwise. So that's why I'm kind of giving them a huge edge in the Big 12 again. But I like it when there are lots of different ways to build a good roster right now. Having the most money certainly is the best path, and being able to spend it that way. But Texas Tech proved last year they had a dynamite team, 3rd in SP Plus at the end of the year. Their quarterback play turned out to not quite be good enough, and that's why we ended up weaving through the Sorsby saga this offseason. Yeah. But the rest of their roster was as good as pretty much anybody's, and so much of it was new to Lubbock that it's a new path to building a good roster.
Well, and it was a fun run for them, and some game day appearances and things like that. We're visiting with Bill Connelly from ESPN, college football writer as well as soccer writer, Weatherford alum, also an author of Forward Progress. Bill, you are you're in Columbia, right?
Yep.
So Missouri alum. I tell you, I've kind of turned a page on Eli Drinkwitz. He really annoyed me the first year or so OU was in the SEC, but I kind of see what he's doing. I kind of see what he's working with and some of the moves he's made. What's the Missouri alumni base thinking about Coach Drink?
OU fans can like him, can hate him a little less since they won that game last year too. That probably didn't hurt. No, he's a good coach. He's obviously a good coach. It was kind of an awkward situation last year. His name's getting mentioned for other jobs. Do you give him some 8-digit a year salary that, very few people actually deserve, and almost nobody really probably deserves, except Nick Saban for what he did for the city of Tuscaloosa. But, do you kind of overspend to hold on to your guy? Do you risk like having to jump back in and lessen the enthusiasm in the fan base? And they obviously spent big to hold on to him. And, he knows what he's doing. Anytime, Missouri obviously needs to hit the quarterback situation this year. They, Bo Pabula had a pretty hard ceiling, and then he got hurt and really had a ceiling last year by the time the OU game rolled around. But they kind of aimed high with this Austin Simmons kid from Ole Miss. If he he throws a sexy ball, like the ball jumps out of his hand, but he threw a ton of picks and took a ton of sacks in a short amount of time last year, and we'll see. But just on average, like kind of the average output of the Missouri program is pretty great. They've been, I think, 21st or better in SP Plus for 3 straight years. And he's navigated the portal pretty well so far, even if there's risk involved in that. So I think, Missouri fans, now that the expectations after that 2023 season when they won the Cotton Bowl, finished in the top 10 and all that, would have made a 12-team playoff had it existed 1 year earlier, then obviously expectations are higher now, and that makes you frustrated when you're merely a top 20 program, but that's still historically pretty great for Missouri.
Well, and Ahmad Hardy is going to probably have a great season, and also former OU lineman Caden Green. I know he's hitting a lot of lists as well, but things definitely looking up in Columbia. You mentioned the coaching situation like that, and I think there's several coaches in the landscape that probably would have gotten the hook last year if not for the buyouts that were involved with the way they played out. I think a couple of years ago, Brent Venables might have gotten the hook had the buyout not been what it was, but Lincoln Riley, a few others. But, I look at some of the programs, and is there a bit more realism with regards to fan bases, administrators, and now with general managers involved that, not just beyond what a school would have to come up with for a buyout, but also just the fact that, you're going to look at it and say, well, we know he's doing everything he can with the resources we're able to provide.
I think watching your team lose games removes all rationality from the situation. That's how it should work.
Yeah.
But the fact that Indiana just won a national title, which probably resulted in 50 different fan bases going, well, if they can do it, why can't we? Yeah. Between that and the fact that the SEC has a 9th conference game this year, you're going to see a lot of fan bases losing their minds, even if they know in their the deepest, darkest recesses of their head or their heart. Like we know, like this is pretty good. 8-4 in this SEC's pretty solid year. Watching Indiana win the national title is going to make you lose your mind, and you're gonna pony up $60 million or whatever to fire your coach.
I can only imagine the discord for Kalen DeBoer. That fan base was so spoiled under Saban, and just to not only see Indiana win the title, but to know that they trucked your team as well, it had to have been mighty tough. And as an OU fan, I go through that as well. But looking at this, and we'll start to kind of wind things down here. But playoff format, if they were going to take your decision and make it rule, what would you look at as a playoff format?
First of all, I've enjoyed 12 a lot more than, when they threw that number out there however many years ago, when they first threw it out there, I was like, wait, nobody's talked about 12. What is it? And then you start to simulate things. You're like, okay, this actually might work. And even though we never saw the version of 12 we were supposed to, where we had like 4 actual power conferences, as opposed, or 5 actual power conferences, as opposed to 2 and then 2. Even though we never saw that version of it, even though things have been skewed towards 2 conferences, it's still been a really good number. I mean, I hated that Notre Dame got left out last year. I thought it was pretty ridiculous. Not necessarily that it got left out, but the way it played out, where they just play better every single week, and then Miami still catches up, and then suddenly they flip at the end. That was stupid. I hated, humans shouldn't be involved in this process. Just give it to the old BCS formula again. But we're still leaving really good teams out. There are still consequences for losses. And, 4-round playoff is a lot of fun. The home games, I wish the quarterfinals were home games too, but we're still having fun with it. So if we stay here for a while, I think that's probably my main preference. Let's just get more than 2 iterations of this thing. We don't have to change anything again.
Yeah.
That said, I've never been scared of 16. I've that's always been first thing I ever wrote about a possible playoff back in 2008 at Football Outsiders. I was pitching of 16 teamers. And so it was a 16 teamer with all conference champions. So a little bit different, but I've never minded that. The 24 teamer that's been, that's being workshopped that Big Ten, that that Tony Petitti from the Big Ten has been slowly building consensus on, it sucks. Yeah. It just sucks. Now, number one, we can't get a 4-round tournament that ends before inauguration day. We have a schedule that I guess it'll get bumped back in a couple of years, but we have other things to fix on the schedule first before we add a 5th round. And number two, how in the world are you going to have a 2014 playoff without every conference champion? They're trying to make people think it's like the FCS tournament, which rules. but like Drake gets invited to the FCS. Like everybody who wins their conference in FCS gets a bid. And I would much rather see, even if there are some extra blowouts, I'd much rather see Conference USA champ Kennesaw State in a national playoff than an 8-4 Iowa team, or, to be fair, an 8-4 Missouri team. That's not a playoff. It's the idea that they pitched is just not like anything else that any other sport produces, and I don't want it.
Yeah, I could get down with 16. My thing is, and even with the 12 team, other than the fact that I guess last year we had 2 group of 6 teams that really, Tulane maybe made it a little more interesting, their second matchup with Ole Miss, but that was still a lot. Is one, the rematches that you've seen.
Yeah.
And then 2, my contention with the FCS or the BCS, and then also the 4-team playoff was that generally you saw, the first 2 left out with a real case. Generally with 8, 12, or 16, your first 2 out aren't going to have just a whole leg to stand on. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, no, I mean, we knew heading into last year that Notre Dame had a 2-game schedule, and they turned out to look way better. And even adjusting for opponent, they were dynamite last year. I think they could have won the whole thing had they gotten in, but we knew they had a 2-game schedule with a lot more deadweight than other teams, and if they didn't go at least 1-1 in those games, they might be in trouble. And it turned out they were in trouble. They just looked a lot better and made muddied the waters a little bit. But even with Texas, I know Steve Sarkisian got all huffy immediately, like, well, I guess we can't schedule Ohio State anymore if it's going to cost us. Like, don't lose to Florida. Like, that was like they looked very mediocre for like half of the SEC schedule. If they looked like a playoff team for most of the year, they'd have been a playoff team. So there's no question that the bar has been lowered a little bit, and there's very clear, like, you got left out. Well, what you should have done instead. And it was on you to finish the job there. And that was, with OU, like I didn't see a playoff for the team in OU, but they won the games they needed to win to get into the playoff. They got into the playoff.
Yeah. And then also with Texas, those overtime victories at Lexington and Starkville were less than impressive. So yeah. One of your big things that in your article about how to enjoy college football the most is ignore the strength of schedule till November. And that is such sage advice.
It's going to be awful. It's going to be so awful, especially week 2. Either Texas or Ohio State's going to lose, and then whoever loses that game is still going to have a huge number of big games left. Ohio State's schedule, they still have at Indiana, Oregon at home, at USC. Texas has a pretty rough SEC slate as well. So yeah, we're going to be arguing about this all year, and it's not going to be any fun whatsoever. So eventually we'll have to deal with it, but I'm going to try as hard as possible not to get sucked into that until like mid-November or so.
Well, and I know he probably takes my tweets to heart, but I really try to call Danny Connell out when he's, ragging on the SEC's, strength of schedule. It's like, well, there are these things called preseason polls, and generally when the preseason polls, come out and somebody, faces X amount of teams on that poll, you could say that's a pretty difficult schedule.
I saw it was Rhett Lashley. I wrote about him in my SP Plus piece. Just, he was there's been a big pushback to like, why do we even have these things? Like, and that's fine. Like, they don't really mean anything now, but that's good. Basically, the preseason polls are there to, number 1, get us talking about the sport.
Yeah.
Number 2, to kind of tell us which games to pay attention to early in the season.
Yeah.
And then they'll change. And the CFP rankings, for all the things I think the CFP does wrong, CFP rankings don't start till November. And if there's an influence from preseason polls in there, it's very minimal. And by the end of the year, you're with a couple of extreme exceptions each season, you're probably about where you were supposed to be. So yeah, they don't hurt anything now. They don't play a role in the national title race. They're just there to kind of help guide us along through the early part of the season. And then the actual teams, the actual results stand on their own.
Exactly. All right. He's Bill Connelly. He is the author of Forward Progress, the definitive guide to the future of college football. You can pick it up, I'm sure, on Amazon and read it on an ebook, or pick up a copy at your local bookstore. And Bill, I tell you, it's last year we kind of did more of a profile on you. I was a little hesitant to hit you up this season because I thought, well, if he he doesn't have a book to promote, does he care about coming on a Western Oklahoma sports podcast? But man, it sure was great of you to visit with us here. We had it open for questions and comments, and so far, out of our viewers, everybody's just been enthralled to hear what you have to say. But I know it's a busy time of year for you, and not just with college football, but also the Premier League and European soccer getting kicked off.
That's right.
And man, I can only imagine what your day consists of.
Well, it's no complaints. Very little of it feels like work. I've been, since I was in second grade in Weatherford, Oklahoma, in Miss Schultz's class. This was kind of what I was wanting to do. So I get to do it. It's pretty cool.
Well, and last year I double tapped you also because I hit you up about a halftime segment. We had
That's right.
Broadcast. So hopefully listeners on Coyote Classic and Weatherford Eagles TV got to find that. I might see if my producer can preserve that for me. We'll put that back out there again. And really, since you are a Weatherford guy, anything we can do to try to promote you in Western Oklahoma, we will sure do it. And I tell you, I'm going to start hitting up some colleges on their Twitter to see if they'll kind of start, hooking you up with the swag, because I see you rolling into your home studio there and breaking open a Benedictine care package.
That's right. I'm all for it. I'm not going to say I can be bribed, but if you want to try, that's fine.
The machine can't, Bill.
That's right. See what we can do in that regard. If you want to try.
One last question. I apologize. I just thought of it. With what you do with SP Plus and all of your analysis of college football and such, how has AI affected your duties and things you do positively or negatively?
Well, short answer is it hasn't. I don't really, other than this summer when I found out that ChatGPT was probably better than Google Translate at translating press conference transcripts.
Yeah.
Because over the course of 10 games, I saw German, Dutch, Croatian, Portuguese, Spanish. It seems like one French. I finally had to accept that maybe there were some tools out there that were a little better for that kind of thing. In terms of football stuff, it does. And I've seen some people do some pretty interesting things in terms of transcribing podcasts and stuff and kind of compiling it into notes. That's kind of interesting. But I think the stat analysis side of things is kind of interesting too there. But I've got what I need right now, so I haven't had to dip too far into those waters.
Good deal. Was it the Belgian coach that kind of looked like a Bond villain, or was it, who was it had the pretty poofy hair?
I'm trying to think. Belgian coach was pretty sharp, if I remember right. Okay. But no, there are. There's some interesting figures out there in that world. Characters.
All right. Well, let's let you get out of here, Bill. And man, thank you so much for your time here and joining us on Western Oklahoma Sports Night. And we'll pop that up there once again. The Forward Progress, the definitive guide to the future of college football, just for the historical aspect. And you're breaking down the history of conferences and things like that. It was just so interesting, because just in my lifetime, Bill, I'm looking back to, Southwest Conference and Big 8 days, and those, we call them the salad days, I guess you could. But the matchups and rivalries and offensive styles. And I know that's what you love about what you do is getting to see the variety within the sport that we love, which is college football.
Yeah, the games make all the extreme nonsense that we put up with worth it. We haven't screwed up Saturdays just yet.
That's right. All right, Bill. Well, thank you so much for your time, buddy. And I hope you have a wonderful season, and we'll follow you on social media, and be sure and share your content to the folks who follow us in Western Oklahoma, and have a great one.
You too.
All right. He's Bill Connelly from ESPN and joins us here on Western Oklahoma Sports Night. We appreciate him very much for taking the time and checking in with us and talking college football, as well as a little bit of footy. Also, be sure and follow him on Twitter and social media at ESPN_Bill C. And we will share his content as well on Lawdog Sports. Be safe out there. Don't text and drive, and sure don't drink and drive. And we'll be back on the air at 6 p.m. live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter X, visiting with Blake Perriman, the new voice of SWOSU Fall Sports, and doing sideline reporting for football, doing soccer, and as well as volleyball. So bringing some great broadcasting to Right Media for Southwestern Oklahoma State University. So catch us at 6 p.m. right here live on Lawdog Sports.